You know, there are these places on our planet that feel like they're not quite real, kind of like blank spots on the map where our imagination can just run wild. And for decades, one of those places has grabbed us like no other: the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1970. You're a pilot, Bruce Gernon, flying over the Bahamas. All of a sudden, you see this weird tunnel-shaped cloud, so you fly into it. Everything goes dark, but there's no storm, just these bizarre, brilliant white flashes. He called it an electronic fog. When he came out the other side, he was over Miami Beach. He had somehow jumped 100 miles and skipped half an hour of time. I mean, it's a story that just seems to break all the rules of reality.
And Gurnon's story, that's just one piece of the puzzle that makes up the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. You've probably heard it called the Devil's Triangle, too. It's this loosely defined patch of the North Atlantic Ocean where supposedly a whole bunch of ships and planes have just vanished, gone, without a single trace.
And this is where things get, well, pretty wild. The explanations people have come up with are incredible. We're talking time warps, that electronic fog we just mentioned, even alien abductions. Some people think there are giant energy crystals from the lost city of Atlantis down there messing with our tech. And my personal favorite, the idea of ocean flatulence. Basically, giant bubbles of methane gas erupting from the seafloor and swallowing ships whole.
As fun as those theories are, the legend wasn't just built on pure speculation. Nope. It was forged in a very real and very tragic event, a single incident that became the absolute cornerstone of the entire mystery. Let's go all the way back to December 5th, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy bombers, known as Flight 19, take off from Florida for a routine training mission. They do their practice bombing run, no problem. But then, an hour later, the flight leader radios in. Both of his compasses are shot. They're lost. Their radio transmissions get weaker and weaker. And then, and this is the part that gets everybody, the rescue plane sent out to find them, it vanishes too. In one of their last haunting radio calls, you can just hear the confusion. Everything seems wrong. We don't know where we are. I mean, it's absolutely chilling. It paints this picture of total disorientation miles out over the empty ocean. By the end of that awful day, 27 men were gone. The 14 pilots and crew of Flight 19, plus the 13 men on the search plane. And not a single piece of wreckage, not one life raft, from any of those 6 planes was ever found. They were just gone. 6 military planes and 27 men disappearing in one afternoon? I mean, it sounds like a movie plot. It's the story that really lit the fuse on the whole Bermuda Triangle legend. But as the years passed, people started to wonder, are we being told the whole story? Or is there something else going on here? Okay, so this is where our story takes a really interesting turn. Enter our detective, a guy named Larry Cush. Now, Cush was a librarian, but he was also a pilot. And back in 1975, he just got tired of hearing these same sensational stories over and over. So he did something nobody else had really bothered to do. He went back to the primary sources, the actual official Navy reports, the weather charts, the original newspaper articles. And what he found was pretty shocking. First off, the number of disappearances in that area, not really that high for a busy stretch of ocean. He found that a lot of the writers just conveniently forgot to mention the massive hurricanes that were happening when ships supposedly vanished in calm seas. He even found cases of boats that were reported missing, but then sailed back into port, and nobody ever bothered to update the story. So the big takeaway? The legend was basically a house of cards, built on sloppy research and a whole lot of hype. So if it's not aliens or weird time warps, what's really going on out there? Well, once you strip away all that paranormal stuff, the real-world explanations are actually just as fascinating. Let's start with the whole compass thing. The legend says some mysterious force makes them go haywire. The reality? The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north line up. It's a known navigational quirk called an agonic line. Now, if you're a pilot and you don't account for it, yeah, you can get turned around, but it's not supernatural, it's just geography. And then you have the ocean itself. The Gulf Stream runs right through this area. And it's not just a current, it's like a massive, fast-moving river inside the ocean. It's so powerful, it can scatter wreckage for hundreds of miles in just a few hours. It can literally erase the evidence of a disaster, making it seem like a plane or a ship just vanished into thin air.
So let's go back to Flight 19, but this time with the facts Kush dug up. Turns out the flight leader, Lieutenant Taylor, had a history of getting lost. On that fateful day, evidence shows he got disoriented, thought the Bahama Islands were the Florida Keys, and tragically, confidently led his men further out into the Atlantic, thinking he was heading home. The Navy's first report actually cited navigational error, but it was later changed to cause unknown, a move that just poured fuel on the fire of the mystery.
And you see this pattern again and again. Once you start digging into the facts of the other famous cases, the mystery starts to fall apart. And what you're left with is a series of unfortunate but totally understandable events.
Like the USS Cyclops, a Navy ship that disappeared in 1918. The legend says it just blinked out of existence. The reality? It was overloaded with super dense manganese ore, and two of its sister ships later sank for the same reason. It was likely a fatal design flaw. Or the Caroline Deering, the so-called ghost ship found abandoned. Well, turns out the ship's log had a change in handwriting, and the crew was seen acting strangely just before it was found. All signs point not to a ghost, but to a mutant.
So what about those giant gas bubbles from the ocean floor? It sounds awesome, right? A bubble of methane erupts, the water density drops, and a ship just sinks like a stone. It's a really cool scientific theory. There's just one problem. The U.S. Geological Survey has looked, and they found no evidence of any massive gas release in that area for the last 15,000 years. So, great story, but it's just not what's happening.
So, after all the books and the movies and the wild speculation, what's the bottom line? What do the people who actually sail these waters every day, the experts, what do they have to say about the Bermuda Triangle? And this pretty much says it all. This is a quote from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They state very clearly that the U.S. Navy and the Coast Guard do not even recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a real thing. They say there's absolutely no evidence that disappearances happen there any more often than in any other heavily trafficked part of the ocean. To them, it's just the ocean. And if you need one last number to really put this to bed, here it is: 0. That's how many times the Bermuda Triangle shows up on the Worldwide Fund for Nature's list of the top 10 most dangerous shipping lanes on the planet. It's not even on the list. In a world full of real dangers, the triangle is just a ghost story. So that leaves us with the real question, right, isn't it? The evidence is pretty overwhelming that the whole thing is a manufactured mystery. And yet, we love it. We're still fascinated by it. So why? Why do we want to believe in a place like the Bermuda Triangle? Is it because a world with a few blank spots on the map is just more exciting? Or maybe it's because it's easier to imagine some supernatural force at work than it is to accept the much scarier truths of simple human error, bad luck, and the raw, unforgiving power of nature.